Cristiano Ronaldo stood at the edge of destiny, his cleats pressing against the cold concrete of the tunnel. This wasn't just another final, this was the crescendo of a career that had defined a generation. The roar of 80,000 voices echoed through the bowels of the ancient stadium, each cheer reverberating through his chest like thunder. The sky above had turned an ominous shade of charcoal, heavy clouds swirling as if the heavens themselves were holding their breath. Lightning flickered in the distance, casting brief, ghostly shadows across the pitch that stretched before him like a green altar of dreams and nightmares. But there was something else, something that made the veteran's skin crawl despite years of playing in the world's most hostile arenas. The Santiago Bernabéu had witnessed countless legends, but tonight felt different. Tonight, the very air seemed to whisper secrets that shouldn't be spoken. The stories had followed the stadium for decades, passed down through generations of players like a cursed inheritance. It was said that in 1987, during a particularly violent thunderstorm, midfielder Carlos Mendoza had simply vanished during the 73rd minute of a Copa del Rey match. One moment he was sprinting toward goal, the next nothing. No body was ever found. No trace remained except for his cleats, discovered days later in the center circle, still warm despite the cold rain that had pounded the pitch that night. The official report spoke of confusion, of players losing sight of each other in the chaos of the storm. But those who were there knew better. They spoke in hushed tones of shadows that moved wrong, of whispers that came from empty seats, of a presence that seemed to watch from the darkest corners of the stadium. The official reports spoke of confusion, of players losing sight of each other in the chaos of the storm. But those who were there knew better. They spoke in hushed tones of shadows that moved wrong, of whispers that came from empty seats, of a presence that seemed to watch from the darkest corners of the stadium. Security footage from that night showed nothing but static during the crucial minutes, as if something had deliberately obscured the truth. As Ronaldo made his way through the tunnel, his footsteps echoing like a funeral march, he noticed something peculiar resting on the bench in the dressing room. A small, leather-bound notebook, its pages yellowed with age and thick with dust, as if it had been forgotten by time itself. His teammates bustled around him, lost in their pre-match rituals, but none seemed to notice the mysterious object. Ronaldo's fingers trembled slightly as he picked it up, the leather cold and oddly smooth beneath his touch. The cover bore no markings, no indication of its origin or purpose. Opening to the first page, his blood ran cold. Written in a shaking, desperate hand were the words that would haunt his final moments on earth. "If you score, they will take you too." Below it, in the same trembling script, "The stadium hungers. It feeds on glory." On moments of pure triumph, a chill ran down Ronaldo's spine, but he forced himself to laugh. Surely this was some elaborate prank, perhaps orchestrated by a teammate with a twisted sense of humor. He'd seen stranger things in his career, fans who believed their rituals could influence the outcome of matches, superstitions that bordered on madness. Yet as he flipped through the notebook's pages, his skepticism began to waver. Page after page contained similar warnings, each written in different handwriting, different languages: Spanish, Portuguese, English, Italian, all conveying the same terrifying message. The dates ranged back decades, some nearly illegible with age. "The shadows in section 30 for move when no one is watching. I heard my name called from the empty stands. They're not fans, they're collectors. The goal is a trap. The net catches more than balls." His hands shaking now, Ronaldo closed the notebook and shoved it into his kit bag. This was ridiculous. He was Cristiano Ronaldo. He'd faced the world's greatest defenders, played in front of hostile crowds that numbered in the millions. He wasn't about to let some dusty old book filled with ghost stories rattle him before the most important match of his career. The referee's whistle pierced the air, and the teams emerged from the tunnel. The crowd's roar was deafening, a wall of sound that seemed to physically press against him. But as they walked onto the pitch, Ronaldo couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched by more than just the paying audience. The stands stretched up into darkness, the floodlights creating pockets of shadow that seemed to writhe and shift when he wasn't looking directly at them. Section 34, mentioned in the notebook, appeared particularly dark, as if the lights there had been deliberately dimmed. He could swear he saw movement in those shadows, figures that didn't quite belong. The first half passed in a blur of tactical warfare. Both teams probed for weaknesses, testing each other with the careful precision of master chess players. Ronaldo found himself glancing towards section 30 for more often than he cared to admit, each look revealing nothing but darkness and the vague shapes of what he assumed were ordinary spectators. But as the half progressed, he began to notice something unsettling. While the rest of the stadium erupted with each near miss, each brilliant save, that particular section remained utterly silent. No cheers, no groans of disappointment, just an eerie stillness that seemed to spread like a disease through the surrounding seats. The halftime whistle brought temporary relief, but as the players trudged toward the tunnel, Ronaldo felt compelled to look back once more. What he saw made his blood freeze in his veins. A figure stood at the edge of section 34, perfectly motionless among the chaos of departing fans. Even from across the pitch, Ronaldo could feel its gaze boring into him. The figure was tall, unnaturally so, wearing what appeared to be an old-fashioned football kit from decades past. Its face was obscured by shadow, but there was something wrong with its posture. The way it held itself as if it were a puppet being controlled by invisible strings. "You see him too," the voice came from behind, causing Ronaldo to spin around. It was Miguel Santos, the veteran goalkeeper whose career spanned 3 decades. His face was pale, his eyes wide with the fear that seemed etched into his very soul. "I've been playing here for 15 years. He appears during the important matches, the ones that matter most." "Who is he?" Ronaldo's voice was barely a whisper, though he wasn't sure why he was whispering. The figure was too far away to hear, yet something told him it could sense every word, every breath, every fearful heartbeat. Miguel's hands shook as he removed his gloves. "They say it's Carlos Mendoza. They say he's waiting for someone to join him, someone who understands what it means to achieve true greatness." His eyes met Ronaldo's, and in them was a desperation that chilled the superstar to his core. Someone who won't be missed by just the fans, but by the entire world. The second half began with an intensity that seemed to charge the very air with electricity. The storm clouds had gathered closer, and the first drops of rain began to spatter the pitch. The crowd's energy was palpable, but underneath it all, Ronaldo could feel something else building, a tension that had nothing to do with the score. It was the 67th minute when everything changed. Ronaldo received the ball just outside the penalty area, his touch perfect despite the increasingly treacherous conditions. Time seemed to slow as he looked up at the goal, the keeper poised like a coiled spring, the defenders closing in from all sides. But in his peripheral vision, he saw something that made his heart skip a beat. The figure from section 34 was no longer in the stands. It was standing on the sideline, just beyond the technical area, completely ignored by the coaches and substitutes who should have been able to see it clearly. Its face was visible now, and Ronaldo wished it wasn't. What stared back at him was indeed human in shape, but wrong in every other way. The skin was pale as moonlight, stretched tight over bones that seemed to shift and move beneath the surface. The eyes were completely black, not just dark, but utterly devoid of light, like looking into the depths of space itself. And it was smiling. The creature's mouth stretched impossibly wide, revealing teeth that were too sharp, too numerous, arranged in rows like a shark's maw. Its hands, which had appeared normal from a distance, were revealed to be elongated claws that clicked together in anticipation. But what terrified Ronaldo most was the recognition in those empty eyes. It knew him, had been waiting for him, had perhaps been waiting for decades for someone of his caliber to arrive at this moment, in this place, with the perfect opportunity to achieve immortality of the most twisted kind. The ball was still at his feet, the goal still beckoning. Around him, the match continued as if nothing had changed, as if death itself wasn't standing mere meters away, salivating at the prospect of claiming the world's greatest footballer. The crowd chanted his name, urging him toward the destiny that awaited. Thunder crashed overhead, and in that instant, Ronaldo understood. This wasn't about football anymore. This wasn't about glory, or records, or the final chapter of a legendary career. This was about choice, the choice between retreating into safety and stepping forward into the unknown. He thought of the notebook, of all those warnings written by hands long since stilled. They had tried to save him, tried to break the cycle, but they had failed. Because in the end, true competitors don't retreat. They don't walk away from the moment that defines them, no matter what horrors await on the other side. The defender was almost upon him now, sliding in with a tackle that would either win the ball or send Ronaldo tumbling to the turf. Time was running out, not just in the match, but in his life as he knew it. The creature on the sideline raised one impossibly long finger to its lips in a gesture of silence, its black eyes never leaving Ronaldo's face. With a movement born of 30 years of training, muscle memory, and an instinct that transcended rational thought, Ronaldo pulled back his right foot. The leather felt different against his boot, heavier somehow, as if the ball itself understood the weight of this moment. The crowd held its breath, 80,000 hearts beating as one. The shot was perfect, struck with the precision that had made him a legend, The ball flew through the rain-soaked air like a missile of pure intent. The goalkeeper dove desperately, his fingertips brushing the leather but unable to alter its trajectory. The net bulged as the ball struck home, and the stadium erupted in a roar that shook the very foundations of the earth. But the celebration was short-lived. As Ronaldo raised his arms in triumph, the floodlights began to flicker. One by one, they died, plunging sections of the stadium into darkness that seemed deeper than night itself. The crowd's cheers turned to confusion, then to fear as an unnatural silence spread like a plague through the arena. In the growing darkness, other figures became visible, dozens of them, perhaps hundreds, standing in the empty seats, on the pitch, in the tunnel entrances. All wore the same otherworldly smile, all had the same impossibly black eyes. They began to move forward, converging on the center circle where Ronaldo stood frozen in horror. The temperature dropped so suddenly that his breath became visible, great clouds of vapor that hung in the air like accusations. The rain turned to sleet, then to something else entirely, drops that fell upward, defying gravity and reason, carrying with them the whispers of voices long silenced. "Welcome," said a voice that came from everywhere and nowhere. "Welcome to the true final." Ronaldo tried to run, but his feet wouldn't obey. The pitch beneath him had changed, becoming something soft and yielding, like quicksand made of shadows and regret. The goal behind him began to glow with an eerie light, its post stretching upward into the darkness like the bars of a cosmic prison. The creature that had been Carlos Mendoza stepped forward, its form more solid now, more real. When it spoke, its voice was like wind through cemetery gates, carrying with it the echoes of every player who had vanished from this cursed ground. "You understand now," it said, its smile never wavering. "Glory has a price. Greatness demands sacrifice. And you have been chosen to pay it." Around him, the other figures began to chant in languages that predated human speech. The sound was horrible, beautiful, mesmerizing in its alien rhythm. Ronaldo felt his consciousness begin to slip away, pulled down into depths he couldn't comprehend. But even as darkness claimed him, even as he felt his physical form beginning to dissolve into shadow and memory, one thought remained crystalline in his mind: the goal had been perfect. In his final moment as a human being, he had achieved something transcendent. When the lights returned, and they did return, suddenly and without explanation, the pitch was empty save for a single football that rolled slowly to a stop in the center circle. Of Cristiano Ronaldo, there was no trace except for his cleats, still warm despite the cold rain that had begun to fall in earnest. The official reports would speak of confusion during the blackout, of players becoming disoriented in the darkness. The footage from that night showed nothing but static during the crucial minutes. But those who were there knew better. They spoke in hushed tones of shadows that moved wrong, of whispers that came from empty seats, of a presence that seemed to watch from the darkest corners of the stadium. And in Section 34, during the most important matches, observant fans began to notice a new figure among the darkness. Tall, athletic, wearing a jersey that bore the number 7. Sometimes, when the cameras panned across the crowd, you could catch a glimpse of him just for a moment, just long enough to see the impossible smile and the eyes that reflected no lie. The notebook remained in the dressing room, gathering dust on the bench where it waited for the next legend to discover it. On its first page, below the original warning, new words had appeared in familiar handwriting: "The final goal is the only goal that matters. And I have scored mine." Cristiano Ronaldo had indeed written his name in football history with golden letters, but the book in which it was written was bound in shadows and stored in a library that existed between the world of the living and the realm of the eternally watching. Cristiano Ronaldo had indeed written his name in football history with golden letters, but the book in which it was written was bound in shadows and stored in a library that existed between the world of the living and the realm of the eternally watching. In the depths of the stadium, in spaces that existed outside normal geometry, the greatest footballer who had ever lived continued to play. The match never ended there, it simply grew larger, more magnificent, more terrible with each new player who joined the eternal team. And sometimes, on nights when the moon was dark and the wind carried whispers from forgotten corners of time, children who lived near the stadium would wake to the sound of a ball being kicked, over and over, in perfect rhythm. The sound of someone practicing for a game that would never end, in a place where glory and horror had become indistinguishable, where the final whistle would never blow, and where the most beautiful goal ever scored was also the most terrifying. The legend was complete. The legend was eternal. And in Section 34, among the shadows that moved when no one was watching, a new guardian of the game waited patiently for the next player worthy of joining the ultimate team, the team that existed beyond life, beyond death. beyond the simple mortal understanding of what it truly meant to achieve greatness.